Good evening, everybody. If you'd like, you can open your Bibles up to 2 Samuel. 2 Samuel chapter 16. And just in the way of giving us a running start into the new material. So David is just being bombarded by devastating news. First report that comes back is the heart of the people are with Absalom. Absalom, your son is rebelling against you. And he sent out spies throughout the land declaring himself king. And so David says, well, we got to get out of town. And so he and his loyal supporters pack up and they leave. And as they're leaving, just one report after another continues. There's some encouragement along the way because there's some people that are loyal to him, his old friends and so forth. But not all of his old friends. And some of the people that he thought he could most trust. You got your son, first of all, that's rebelled against you. But then he hears that Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom. This is doubly devastating because, number one, Ahithophel was a trusted friend, so you've got just betrayal there. Number two, Ahithophel is an extremely wise counselor. And to lose that to the opposing side is a big blow there. And so then he goes along and he comes, and Ziba comes to meet him with some provisions. And you remember who Ziba was? Mephibosheth's servant. And David says, well, where's Mephibosheth? And the answer that Ziba gives is, well, today he says that the house of Israel is restoring the kingdom to my father. And so he's rejoicing and glad that this is happening to you because he thinks he's going to get the kingdom somehow. And so that would be very devastating to David. And then we come to verse 5. When David came to Bahurim, there a man from the family of the house of Saul, whose name was Shimei, the son of Gera, coming there, came out cursing continually as he came. And it wasn't just that he was using a lot of profanity, although maybe he was using profanity. Cursing, when we read about it in the Bible, is not using, a particular word to express surprise or frustration or pain or something. What was cursing? Yes, pronouncing evil on someone. And probably we get that idea of cursing being profanity because when you think about the curse word damn, the idea was pronouncing condemnation on somebody for something. And so we probably get that transition with that. But he was speaking ill of and for David on that. And so, and not only is he cursing continually, what else does he say? Verse 6 say? Throwing stones at the king and at the king's servants. Now, you would think that this would be worthy of being put to death, and you wouldn't be alone in thinking that. Others would think that as well. It seems that his mighty men were kind of protecting of this, but I want you to notice what he was saying in verse 7. Shimei said thus when he cursed, come out, you bloodthirsty man, you rogue. What's a rogue? Yeah, I think I have a footnote. You worthless fellow. And come out, you rogue. The Lord has brought upon you all the blood of the house of Saul, in whose place you have reigned. And the Lord has delivered the kingdom into the hand of Absalom your son. So now you are caught in your own evil because you are a bloodthirsty man. Okay. Now, I'm interested to know, what about this that he says, do you think is true or do you think is false?
It's probably about the killing Bathsheba's husband.
Okay.
That would be what they'd say that would be bloodthirsty.
Okay.
Because the other stuff that he done, it was under what God told him to do when they was in war.
Okay.
Unless something other has happened that is not actually told in the scripture.
So you would say it's true that he is a bloodthirsty man?
Yeah,
okay.
On killing her husband.
Right.
He didn't shed blood in the house of Saul. He was very respectful.
Yeah.
I don't think Shimei's. I just have a footnote that says he is getting what he deserves, not for the house of Saul.
Yes.
But for the death of Uriah and the sin of passion.
Yeah, so that first part, and maybe I misunderstood this. I meant to look this up in other versions and see if they rendered this any differently. The Lord has brought upon you all the blood of the house of Saul. There seems to be an implication in that that David, you're guilty of the blood of the house of Saul. Was David guilty of the blood? As you said, he was always very respectful of that, protecting Saul in many in ways.
Cut his cloak off of him when he walked up to him, but he didn't kill him.
And he felt bad about that. And he felt guilty about that. So yeah, so that, if that's what the charge that's being made, that's completely false. So how do you feel about someone who comes out? First of all, does the king deserve to be treated this way? No. And then there's slander that seems to be taking place here. But as was mentioned, there is some truth in this. David has been a bloodthirsty man.
Wouldn't part of this actually be what God told him that because of what he'd done, that the shame would come on?
Mm-hmm.
Not only about his wives being taken from him, but all the things that he had done evil in God's sight, that he was going to bring it out open unto all the people, and that he would actually feel what he'd done when he killed.
So you look at this, and one of the things that Shimei says, so now you are caught in your own evil because you are a bloodthirsty man. If you were David and you heard that, how would you respond to that?
Probably remember what he'd already been told.
Exactly. So he could lash out in anger here. How dare you treat the Lord's anointed that way? But he also realizes, I have been a bloodthirsty man, and I am caught in my own evil. The Lord even told me that these type of things would happen to me.
But one other thing, even though Shimei said what he did, God's going to pay justice back to him for actually talking that way to his anointed king, because God didn't set up Absalom. People did, and Absalom did. I mean,
But we'll have to wait for that.
what I'm saying is, but he'll actually pay for what he
Yeah.
does in this scripture.
Yeah, Shimei, he's obviously not speaking from inspiration. You know, and as far as regarding the house of Saul, it seems like some bitterness. I mean, his family, this was his heritage, and
He's a Benjamite.
he's a Benjamite, and so yeah, it sounds like sour grapes as far as that angle goes. But the ESV says a man of blood. It doesn't say a bloodthirsty man. So, I kind of wondered about that. Certainly, yes. I mean, he's had his share of blood, and we know that he wasn't allowed by God to build the temple because of
Right.
that very factor. But as you said, more, he has more personal blood on his hands.
Yeah.
At this point.
That may be the reason Shimei said all the blood of the house of Saul, because Saul died in battle, like most of his followers.
Right.
Maybe that's what Shimei was talking about, because Jonathan died too.
Yeah. Maybe.
Wasn't David going out to that battle?
Yeah.
Philistine
Mm-hmm.
king sent him back.
Yep.
And if he'd have been on Saul's side, then maybe the Philistines would have killed Jonathan.
Yeah. Yep. So, I think everybody would recognize that Shimei is way out of step here. He's way out of line to be throwing rocks at the king and cursing the king. The Lord's anointed, not just the king, but the Lord's anointed. And so Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, said to the king, "Why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Please let me go over and take his head off." And you think about how would have David felt about the Lord's anointed and someone treating the Lord's anointed this way?
He would have took his head off.
Yeah, Abishai is not acting out of character from the way that I think David would act if somebody was disrespecting the Lord's anointed in this way.
Sounds like the Sons of Thunder later on.
Exactly. It really. So you know how we were talking about the parallels, just the interesting little things, just like David crossing the brook Kidron and going up on the Mount of Olives when Jesus crossed over when he was betrayed, and those type of things. So this is another one of those things that I just can't help but think about when you remember the Sons of Thunder. And Jesus goes to the Samaritan village, and the Samaritan village won't receive him. And James and John says, Lord, shall we call down fire from heaven upon this? And he says, you don't know what spirit you are. And it's almost like here again you have two brothers, and this is one of them. And he comes to David and says, well, if he's going to reject you, let's kill him. And David responds much the way that Jesus did. You know, what have I had to do with you, son of Zeruiah? Let him curse, because the Lord has said, curse David. Who then shall say, why have you done so? So David said to Abishai and all of his servants, see how my own son, who came from my own body, seeks my life? How much more now may this Benjamite? Let him alone. Let him curse, for so the Lord has ordered him. It may be that the Lord will look on my affliction, and that the Lord will repay me with goodness for his cursing this day. What I see here in David is I see a willingness. First of all, he recognizes that, yeah, this has come upon me because of my own evil. These are the consequences of my actions in this. And no, really a defense can't be made for Shimei in this. But maybe if I accept the blame for this, and accept the guilt from this, and respond in humility to this, that God will help me in this. Does that sound like a wise thing to do? Does that sound biblical?
But it sounds that David is actually, even as him being anointed king, he's humble.
Yeah.
And proud, like Saul was.
Exactly.
And God says that the people or persons that are humble, that he will raise them up, exalt them. And the ones that are proud, he'll actually bring them down.
So Luke 14:11, one of the reasons why it's a memory verse for the drill class, needs to, if not this verse, we need to have several of the verses about humility ingrained and etched in our minds, and that is that whoever humbles himself, the Lord will exalt. Whoever exalts himself, the Lord will humble. And so we need to know that. We need to have that. David recognizes that here, and he responds in humility, and he puts himself in the Lord's hands. Let the Lord lift me up if he so wants. But I'll accept this humble position.
And as Steve said, you know, how many kings would ever lower themselves to this point? Even, you know, as they are being literally quite humbled by having to, escape the city on foot, they would still be too proud to accept something like this.
That's right. And verse 13 goes on to say, and just try to envision this. David and all of his men went along the road, and Shimei went along the hillside opposite him, cursing as he went, and threw stones at him and kicked up dust. Can you just picture that? Here's David plodding along, his men plodding along. The very next verse talks about how they were weary, and they're plodding along, and here's somebody chunking rocks and cursing and kicking up dust, and boy, this is a long, miserable trip for David.
This Bahurim, do you have that labeled on your
I do not. No, I don't know.
It's because it is going to come up again.
Yeah.
This location.
I don't have anything on that.
It looked like, from what I could tell, and I don't know if they were, if people are for sure, but it looked like it's just outside of the Mount of Olives, just the other side.
That would probably be right. Yeah.
Nearby Jerusalem. So.
Yeah, that would probably be the approximate location that I can tell where they're at this point. Okay. But I don't know. This is a good place. We've been trying to incorporate some of the Psalms in, and this would be a good place to incorporate a couple of the Psalms. One of them is not directly tied to this event, but look over in Psalm 55. Hold your place there because we'll be coming back. But look over in Psalm 55. So we've talked about before that in most Bibles you have whoever your publisher is may have a heading for the psalm or a paragraph or whatever. For instance, Nelson New King James has for Psalm 55, trust in God concerning the treachery of friends. Okay, well, that's not in the original text. That's supplied by the publisher to give us an idea of what the psalm may be about. But below that, There is another heading. Does everybody have? I know everybody has the next heading. To the chief musician with stringed instruments, a contemplation of who? Of David. All right, this is in the text, and it was put there, we assume, by inspired men to let us know what this is about. Now, this doesn't tell us anything except it's a contemplation of David. But I want to know, just notice a few things here, and notice how what David is contemplating here, how well it would fit with the situation that we're looking at. Look at verses 5 through 6. My heart is severely pained within me, and the terrors of death have fallen upon me. Fearfulness and trembling have come upon me, and horror has overwhelmed me. And I said, oh, that I had wings like a dove, for then I would fly away and be at rest. Indeed, I would wander far off and remain in the wilderness. Well, that's exactly where he's headed right now. I'm not saying that this psalm is necessarily talking about that event, but it describes well what David is going through. Drop down to verse 12. For it's not an enemy who reproaches me, then I could bear it, nor is it one who hates me, who has magnified himself against me. Then I could hide from him. But it was you, a man my equal, my companion, and my acquaintance. We took sweet counsel together and walked to the house of God in the throng. Who could that fit? It could fit Ahithophel. It could probably fit Absalom too, and probably a lot of others that are on Absalom's side at this point. And so verse 16, 17, 18, as for me, I will call upon God, and the Lord shall save me. Evening and morning and at noon, I will pray and cry aloud, and he shall hear my voice. He has redeemed my soul in peace from battle, which was against me. We'll just stop right there with this psalm. But you see that flow of thought and how there would be a number of times in David's life where that would be the case. But that well could apply to this situation. Certainly, it's fitting in this situation. The other psalm that I want us to look at is Psalm 3. I don't know why I closed my Bible from Psalm 3, but look at Psalm 3, and someone read for me the heading that is in the original text.
Psalm of David when he fled from Absalom, his son.
All right. Now, that's helpful because now we know what David is dealing with in this psalm, right? We know what he's addressing here and what his feelings are at this time. And so thinking about that other one, yeah, we see how that fits. This one, we know fits. You want to take it or you want me to?
Yeah, it's just 8 verses, so we can go ahead and read this. O Lord, how many are my foes? Many are rising against me. Many are saying of my soul, there is no salvation for him in God. And, I'm going to stop right there. What did we just get through reading with Shimei? Wasn't he basically telling him that very thing?
Yep.
That, this was judgment from God, basically being pronounced on David. There's no salvation from God. Verse 3, but you, O Lord, are a shield about me, my glory and the lifter of my head. I cried aloud to the Lord, and he answered me from his holy hill. I lay down and slept. I woke again, for the Lord sustained me. Verse 5 is an interesting one to me. Even through this adversity, David realizes who's sustaining him, who's taking care of him. And even on the flip side, how many people would have the faith and the trust to go through a situation like this and actually sleep? It'd be difficult. But, what's David's, where's his confidence? It's in God. Therefore, he can have a peace about him that, all external forces would suggest, there is no peace, but he finds that inner peace to be able to lay down and sleep. I will not be afraid of many thousands of people who have set themselves against me all around. Arise, O Lord, save me, O my God, for you strike all my enemies on the cheek. You break the teeth of the wicked. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Your blessing be on your people. So, he closes, and of course, this is a very intimate psalm and prayer to God, praise unto God. But, he doesn't just center his, himself on this. Who else does he pray for, or who does he speak of in this? The people. Yeah, his people. The Lord's people. His concern isn't just on himself. Of course, when I'm going through troubles, that's pretty much who I'm focused on. I don't know about you, but when I'm going through adversity, that's pretty much where my attention is. But David was concerned as well for his people, and so it's a wonderful psalm to look at and break down and try to relate to. Again, I think the Psalms gives us the the inner portion of David's heart, and really conveys why David was a man after God's own heart.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't always see that through the narrative, but when we look through the Psalms, we think, oh yeah, I see it now. I see it.
That's why I'm so thankful that the Holy Spirit saw fit to reveal those little headings and preserve those headings for us there, because what's David thinking? How is he going through? We know he would be grieving over this. We've already seen how he's responded to something, but then to have that picture of how he's working through this and where he goes for his rock. Where's his rock at? It's in the Lord. And so we see that. So I love that we can plug some of those Psalms into different places there. Anything else about that?
His holy hill. Is that just conveying the idea of his exaltation over man? Or what is the idea there, his holy hill?
So a lot of times that phrase is talking about Zion, Mount Zion, Jerusalem, the Temple Mount. Whether that's what David has in mind here or not, I don't know specifically, but a lot of times that idea of the holy hill is the city of Jerusalem. And
of course, Zion hasn't been selected yet.
Right, yeah. So
but Jerusalem is still on a hill.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that's specifically what he has in mind here or not.
I think the parallel between David's concern for the people and Jesus' concern for the people
Yes.
should stand out.
That's right. And Gerald may mention this idea, in verse 2. There is no help from him in God. Well, David's going to relay this even more in Psalm 22. But what were they saying about Jesus when he was being crucified? Yeah, he says he's the Son of God. Let's see if God will come and help him. There's no help for him in God. If God was really going to help him, he wouldn't allow this to happen to him. And so Psalm 22 points that out, specifically. But here, David even kind of alludes to that. So there's another of those parallels that we see as we go through here. All right, anything else about that? All right, back over to the narrative then in 2 Samuel chapter 16. And so verse 14 says that the king and all the people who were with him became what? Weary. All right, hold on to that. Just tuck that away. And so they refresh themselves. They stop and by the way, that climb up the Mount of Olives, that's a good climb. And if you're doing it in haste and you're trying to pack some stuff with you or whatever, I could see how you'd be tired. I don't know how far they've gone on the other side yet, but far enough where they're tired at this point.
At the Jordan.
I don't know if they're at the Jordan yet or not.
ESV says arrived weary at the Jordan.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
Of course, it says the Septuagint does leave out Jordan, so
Well.
I don't know what does that mean.
I don't know.
It's not in the Greek version.
Yeah, it's not in the Greek version, and so I don't know. I don't know whether it was at the Jordan or not. We'll come back to that. That changes my perspective. If he's at the Jordan, yeah, that's a long trip. No, they would be exhausted by then for sure. And so we'll catch up with that. But the New King James does not say that, and so I like I said, I didn't look at another version there, and I missed that. All right. Meanwhile, verse 15: Absalom and all the people, the men of Israel, came to Jerusalem, and who was with them? Ahithophel is with them. And so they come to Jerusalem. And the reason that Ahithophel is pointed out here is because he's about to become an active part of this narrative. And so it was when Hushai, who's Hushai the Archite? David's friend. Give me the background of... That's right. You go defeat Ahithophel's. Go back and you kind of be an inner spy for me there and try to give counsel that would offset Ahithophel's counsel. So when Absalom comes in, Hushai said to Absalom, "Long live the king, long live the king." And Absalom seems to be a little taken off by this, and he says, "Is this your loyalty to your friend? Why did you not go with your friend?" And Hushai said to Absalom, "No, but by whom the Lord and his people and all the men of Israel choose, his will I be, and with him I will remain. Furthermore, whom should I serve? Should I not serve in the presence of his son? As I have served in your father's presence, so I will be in your presence." And this seems to, lay aside Absalom's concern about this, and he seems to be accepting of that. And so then Absalom said to Ahithophel, "Give counsel as to what we should do." And Ahithophel said to Absalom, "Go into your father's concubines, and whom he's left to keep house, and all of Israel will hear that you are abhorred by your father. Then the hands of all who are with you will be strong." Okay, so we've seen that Absalom has won the hearts of the people. But do the people just hate David? No. And so this division is not as strong maybe as Absalom wants it to be, needs it to be able to pull off this rebellion. He needs everybody to pick a side and really be loyal to it. So what he's about to do is he's about to double down on this. He's about to cross a line where everybody realizes, whoa, there's no point of return here. We've got to pick a side.
He's all in.
He's all in. And so what Ahithophel is saying is, you do something that would make it so that everybody would realize, okay, the line's been crossed that can't be undone. And what you do is you take the 10 concubines that were left to keep house, and you go in and sleep with them. And the idea of sleeping with the previous king's wives was the idea, I have taken over. And you remember that when David sinned with Bathsheba and he was rebuked through Nathan, that the message through Nathan was, "I gave you your master's house and your master's wives." And if that had been, I don't know that David ever slept with any of Saul's wives. But the idea was he has taken over the kingdom. The new dynasty has come to power. And so that's the idea here. So this would be a symbolic act of showing that now I'm the one who rules. And also, I mean, when you sleep with somebody else's wife, even the Proverbs talk about your chances of getting forgiveness of that and working that out are pretty slim.
Cross the line, don't come back.
That's right. And so that's the point. And Ahithophel says, you do that, and then everybody will know, okay, this is war. I mean, David's not going to look over this. He will abhor you in this. And so he does that. But this is also a specific fulfillment of something that God said would happen. Back in 2 Samuel chapter 12, let's just flip back there real quickly and look at this. 2 Samuel chapter 12, when Nathan is talking to him, in verse 12, back up to verse 11. 2 Samuel 12, verse 11, "Thus says the Lord, behold, I will raise up adversity against you from your own house." Okay, we've got that. "And I will take your wives from before your eyes and give them to your neighbor, and he shall lie with your wives in the sight of this sun. For you did it secretly, but I will do this thing before all of Israel, before the sun." This will be something that everybody's aware of. You took somebody else's wife and you tried to hide it, but this will be something that everybody will know about. And so what Absalom does in verse 22 is they pitch a tent for Absalom on the top of the house, and Absalom went into his father's concubines in the sight of all of Israel. So they made this very public by putting a tent on the top of that. I wonder what housetop that was.
The one that he looked down at Bathsheba.
That would have been the most visible one. That would have been the most visible one. The irony in that, if that would be the case. So this is done, and now the house of Israel knows we've got to pick a side. Now look at verse 23. "The counsel of Ahithophel, which he gave in those days, was as if one inquired at the oracle of God. So was all the counsel of Ahithophel, both with David and with Absalom." In other words, what the writer is telling us here is, this was, for Absalom's purposes, this was good counsel, because it did make everybody have to choose a side. And all of Ahithophel's counsel was that way. And so when David said, "Oh, this is bad that Ahithophel," this is serious. And he prayed to God, God, please defeat the counsel of Ahithophel. The reason David was so concerned about that is because he knew Ahithophel was a shrewd man. He knew how things operated and worked. And so hold on to that, because that's going to bleed into the next chapter here. Any thoughts through chapter 16?
Going back to Hushai's greeting to Absalom, you're talking about risky. This is pretty risky situation for him, because he could easily be taken out.
Yes.
Because Absalom really knows. But of course, it's not unusual for a king to have many advisors. But he specifically calls him my father's friend.
Yep.
But Hushai seems to sell it well enough that Absalom's going to take a chance here.
Yeah. And we will see that the Lord is behind this, and so I'm sure that factored into that as well. But all right, chapter 17.
Chapter 17. All right. It says, moreover, Ahithophel said to Absalom, let me choose 12,000 men, and I will arise and pursue David tonight. I will come upon him while he is weary and discouraged, and throw him into a panic, and all the people who are with him will flee. I will strike down only the king, and I will bring all the people back to you as a bride comes home to her husband. You seek the life of only one man, and all the people will be at peace. And the advice seemed right in the eyes of Absalom and all the elders of Israel. Now, this advice is given, and this is pretty dangerous for David, because they are weary. I mean, that's what we ended off with their story before we shifted back to Jerusalem, was that wherever they're at, whether it's at Jordan or wherever, they arrive weary.
Yeah.
So they are weary. They are weakened. They're vulnerable. And Ahithophel knows that, and he's wanting to strike while the iron is hot. And so he advises Absalom to allow him to take 12,000 men. And this is the passage that kind of, I wonder, and it doesn't matter, but I wonder if this inclines that Ahithophel's a little bit younger man than Hushai. He probably wouldn't be able to take men and go pursue after David into the wilderness like Ahithophel is. But so he's wanting to pursue David and strike him while things are fresh, while he's vulnerable, while he's weakened. And so this is advice that is not only good to the eyes of Absalom, but all the elders of Israel.
But see, the thing about it is, even though it looked good to all of them and even though they took, 12,000 men? There was times when God, different nations was coming, and Israel didn't even actually go out. God killed them all. I mean, so it don't matter if they had 12,000 or if they had the whole nation of Israel going after David, and he's his chosen. God could take them out and didn't have to have nobody.
So I like to think about that, because there's a lot of different ways that God can protect David. On this occasion, God doesn't choose to protect David by sending an angel and wiping out 12,000 men. Or hornets, that's right. On this occasion, what God's going to use, this is deadly counsel. This is deadly counsel against David.
Yeah, if you look at it face value,
that's right.
It's absolutely deadly.
That's exactly right. And so how is God going to defeat this plan? Now, God could defeat it with hornets. God could defeat it with an angel of death. God could defeat it in a number of ways. The way that God's going to defeat it this time is without any miraculous event. But remember, what was David's prayer? God, defeat the counsel of Ahithophel. And he is hoping that Hushai can do so. And this is the answer to David's prayer. This is the answer to David's prayer. So Absalom said, call now Hushai the Archite also, and let us hear what he has to say too. Boy, everybody already thought this was a good idea. We could have just said, let's do it. But he stops and he says, well, let's see what Hushai has to say about this.
Yeah, just to see what kind of angle he what he has to bring to the table.
Now, I want you to think about that you're Hushai, because here's what happened. He's summoned. I don't think that he knows what the counsel is at this point. So he comes without any knowledge of what's been said. And Hushai came and Absalom spoke and said, Ahithophel spoke in this manner. In other words, so he gives them the plan that we should attack right away. Shall we do as he says? If not, speak up. In a moment, Hushai has to come up with a plan to defeat this good counsel, because I think Hushai knows, oh, yeah, that would work. And so he says, the counsel of Ahithophel that Ahithophel is given is not good at this time. For, said Hushai, you know your father and his men, that they are mighty men, and they are enraged in their minds as a bear robbed of her cubs in the field, and that your father is a man of war, and he will not camp with the people. Surely by now he's hidden in some pit or in some other place. And it shall be, when some of them are overthrown at the first, that whoever hears of it will say, there's a slaughter among the people who follow Absalom. And even he who is valiant, whose heart is like a lion, will melt completely. For all Israel knows that your father is a mighty man, and those who are with him are valiant men. Therefore, I counsel that all Israel be fully gathered to you, from Dan to Beersheba, like the sand that is on the sea for multitude, and that you go to battle in person. So we will come upon him in some place where he may lie, where he may be found, and we will fall upon him as the dew falls on the ground. And of him and all the men who are with him, there shall not be left so much as one. Moreover, if he's withdrawn into some city, then all shall bring ropes to that city, and we will pull it into the river until there's not one small stone found there. This is a brilliant speech.
He would make a good defense attorney.
Yes.
Because, their goal is to create doubt. And that's exactly what he does.
He does.
Yeah.
He does it he defeats the counsel in two ways. Number one, he creates doubt and fear. He's a man of war. And boy, if he just had a little success in this first battle, then everybody could be thrown off by this and panic. And we can't have that. And plus, the chances of getting him, just him alone, is rare. He knows about this. He knows how to hide. Well, that was sound reasoning there.
Absalom would remember those stories of David in his youth and all of the things that he went through.
You would
out there in
think.
the wilderness. He would know, hey, this is my father's territory.
That's right.
He knows this land well.
Yes. And then his second punch is this: pride. If you were Absalom and you knew that there were a bunch of people who were loyal enough to your father to flee, would you want to just kill David? Or would you prefer to have all the people that have not chosen your side to be wiped out? All the people. And I'll tell you what we can do. We can show them just how strong we are. We can come and we can annihilate them. And
Beersheba.
that's right. And you can lead. You can go in person and lead. And the victory will be yours. And then the kingdom will be sought. So this combination of doubt and fear combined with the pride of and eliminating all of his enemies. Absalom likes this.
This plan leaves no doubt.
Yes, that's right.
It'd just be so overwhelming.
Yeah.
It'd be just an utter, demolishing.
All right, so that sounds good. Let me ask you this. If God doesn't intervene, which do you think would work? If God didn't intervene, I would say this, that Ahithophel's advice is better from what we know. Because what happens is David is tired and weary. And they could fall upon him at this point, and it would be tough for them to make a defense. The other, even though you say, well, you got all of the soldiers there together, well, how does that's exactly Hushai's counsel is followed, and how does the battle turn out? Yeah, Absalom loses. And so again, God did have a hand in that, I believe. But notice what is said here. It says, Absalom and all the men of Israel said, the counsel of Hushai the Archite is better than the counsel of Ahithophel. And then we have the inspired commentary that says, for the Lord had purposed to defeat the good counsel of Ahithophel to the intent that the Lord might bring disaster on Absalom. In other words, if you were taking which of these plans was better, The Bible says Ahithophel's plan was better. But where God intervened here was with the bad counsel of Hushai, who convinces Absalom to do something that will not work. Will not work. And so it's really interesting because, as Steve was saying, we know whose side the Lord is on. And the Lord could have done it any number of ways, but He does it in this way. The reason that I point that out is I would love to know, and I'm sure you have a curiosity, well, how does God work in our lives? How is He doing things in our life? You know, if He's for us, well, how is He accomplishing these things? Well, we may not always know, but we see that He works in a lot of different ways. Sometimes miraculous, in the Scripture we see that, but He often works in a non-miraculous way as well. And this is an example of that.
But it's always God works in our lives. You know, we ask for stuff, well, it out now, but it'll actually happen in God's will at God's time, not ours. And if we're truly loyal to God, He'll always be with us.
All right, we got 5 minutes. Let's see if we can get to...
I can summarize 15 through 22.
Yeah, let's see if we can get through 22. That'd be a good stopping point.
All right, so the plan is in place, and so Hushai is going to implement the spy system. You remember the spy system that David established so that he could keep up with what's taking place there in Jerusalem, the decisions that are being placed. So Hushai contacts Zadok and Abiathar. Who are they? Priest. And so they send a young girl who sends the message to their two sons, Jonathan and Ahimaaz. And they're lying outside of the city. They seem to be in that city, Bahurim, is where they're lying. Well, actually,
they're in Rogue.
They are
in
Rogue, but they converse with the young girl, and so they head out. But in the meantime, a young man sees this interaction taking place between the young girl and them two. And he comes back to Absalom and tells what's taking place. So Absalom sends those after the two young men, and they end up in Bahurim. And that's where a young lady hides them in a well. They crawl into a well, and she covers the well mouth with a covering, and scatters grain on it. And so it conceals their hiding or their whereabouts. The young men come, inquire of the young girl about Jonathan and Ahimaaz. She sends them off to a brook. They leave. They're not able to find them. They go back to Jerusalem. Anyway, long story short, they are able to leave and go to David and report what's taking place. And they report that the counsel of Ahithophel and what's taking place there. So David arises, verse 22, and all the people who were with him. And then they cross the Jordan. So they seem to be on Israel's side at this point in time. But where they normally would have, it seems, braked at that point in time, rested, they're back on their feet, and they cross over to Jordan to try to make as much headway as they can, distance between them and Absalom. And it says that by daybreak, not one was left who had not crossed the Jordan. So the spy system worked out really well for David on this occasion. It was in jeopardy at times, but it did work out well.
I said 22 would be a good place to stop, but let me squeeze in 23 because we don't want to leave that. Now Ahithophel saw that his counsel was not followed. He saddled his donkey. He rose and went home to his house, to his city. He put his household in order, and he hanged himself and died and was buried in his father's tomb. He was sharp enough to figure out, this won't work. I picked the wrong side. I picked the wrong side. Who does this remind you of? It reminds you of Judas, who betrayed the Lord's anointed and realized afterwards, I picked the wrong side. And that's a bad place to be in. There's a powerful lesson in that I think flows from this story to Judas to the book of Revelation. In the book of Revelation, it's about picking sides. There's going to be a winning side and there's going to be a losing side. The losing side is going to be tempting to join. It's going to look good in a lot of ways. But don't betray the Lord's anointed, because in the end, that will be the winning side. And so if you have to suffer with the Lord's anointed, be faithful, because that will be the winning side. And I think that concept starts, well, it's all the way through the Scripture, but we see it here. We see it with Judas, and we need to learn that lesson because we're making that same decision. We're deciding whether we will be loyal to the Lord's anointed or whether we will defect to the side that looks pretty appealing. And but we need to know the outcome. And the outcome is those who pick the wrong side end up like Ahithophel. They end up like Judas.
It's already been decided.
It's already been decided. That's right. That's right. Any final comments? Thank you for your good attention. Appreciate it. Thanks for watching. If you found this video to be beneficial, please follow us on Facebook or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Feel free to share it with others that you feel like may benefit from it. If you need to contact us, please contact us via email at quinn.church@yahoo.com. Also, if you're in the area, we would love for you to come visit with us at one of our assemblies. Have a good day.